Welcome to Stroke Cover, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Ed Report, and we're here for another poetry discussion that comes to us from Charles Bukowski. In You Get So Alone at Times That It Just Makes Sense. The poem in question is a non-urgent poem. I have to warn you on this one. I just pressed record instead of taking any notes, instead of preparing anything to talk about, because it seems that would be sort of the spirit of the poem. A non-urgent poem reads as such. I had this fellow write me that he felt there wasn't the urgency in my poems of the present as compared to my poems of the past. Now, if this is true, why did he write me about it? Have I made his days more incomplete? It's possible. Well, I too have felt let down by writers I once thought were powerful or at least very damn good, but I never considered writing them to inform them that I sensed their demise. I found the best thing I could do was just to type away at my own work and let the dying die, as they always have. I think we've all felt this. I think that's probably not a fair statement. Maybe we have not all felt this with a writer. I think that if you have found your way to this channel, odds are your favorite writer is probably already dead. For me, at one time, that was not true. For me, at one time, that writer was Chuck Palahniuk. And I sensed his demise. I don't think that Chuck Palahniuk has written many very good books. Choke was all right. Haunted was a valiant effort. Fight Club. Fight Club's good. So it makes me wonder what that experience is like on a deeper level. Would I feel compelled? Would you feel compelled if your favorite writer is alive or was alive and started writing schlock by your own estimate? I think probably, more than likely, more of us than not have had this experience with musicians. Though I did not write Chris Cornell when his last solo album came out, I did buy it, and I did throw it away. Though I did not write Chris Cornell when the last Soundgarden album came out, I did buy it, and I don't know what happened. I might have thrown it away, I'm not sure. Though I did not write Chris Cornell when the Final Audio Slave album came out, I did buy it, and I did my goddamnedest. I think it's an all right album. So I definitely have this feeling. I have had this experience with musicians. Other than that, other than the ultimate album in any of his artistic endeavors, Chris Cornell was flawless. By God. And a beautiful man. But the one thing here that really strikes me with this poem, and why I think that it is probably necessary to not take notes when discussing this poem. Without my glasses, I have no idea if I'm looking at the camera part or not. I just have to be honest. Where was I? Why I think it's not necessary to take notes on this. This is the problem with not taking notes on this. Right, yeah. Who's to say if a writer has fallen off? Maybe you didn't understand any of his work to begin with. Maybe I had a gross misinterpretation of Fight Club. And all of his other novels, Chuck Palahniuk, are subsequently greater than the previous. Maybe the fault is in me. Maybe I'm the asshole here. Hey, I've been the asshole before. Possible that I'm the asshole again. And this idea from Bukowski, why is he writing to me? Well, I mean, I guess. Who else would he write to? I guess. Who else would he write to? Where does he get to focus that rage? To whom would he vocalize his distaste besides the author himself? In fact, mightn't it be the mano a mano thing to do? Instead of talking shit behind your back, Chucky Buck, I'm going to write to you. Maybe. But who's to say that the artist his or herself has any real control over that? I know, hey, feels real hippy-dippy. Feels real silly to put that out there. Feels real new age and lazy an assertion to suggest that an artist is not able to control the quality of their own work. Who else is going to control it? They're the artist. Leads me back to another quote from Bukowski, or from Polnick. Polnick was asked, God, I don't even remember this. I just remember the quote. So I don't know what the interview was about, what the interview was for, who was doing the interview. I just know who was receiving the interview was Chuck Palahniuk. He was asked about his novel writing process. I don't remember for which novel. But the person conducting the interview, who for some reason I have no recollection of, asked, so how do you do it? Do you sit down and write 10 pages a day? Do you have a 500 word per day limit? Do you sit down and write a good scene and then get up? How do you do it? And Polnick looked at him and said, well, if you don't have to shit, how often do you sit on the toilet? It's a pretty straightforward question. I doubt you ever do. And that was Chuck Palahniuk's point. Now, I am of the belief that that is a faulty way to go about things. But hey, I've never made millions of dollars from writing. But the answer sort of to Bukowski's, why did he write me? Is sort of in that. Sort of involved in that question. Does the artist have any real control? I'm not going to go get it, but Sam Harris's free will, how many of your own thoughts do you control? And if you control them, at what point do you get to say, let me have this thought? So if I'm sitting here and I say, I think I want to write a story about presidents. Well, okay, that feels like free will. But from what point did I start to say presidents? Why did I say presidents? Mightn't I have also said queens of England? I mean, who wants to write about anything from England? But I could have said it, in all fairness. Who wants to do that? But I could have said it, So, if we don't even technically have the free will to be choosing subjects about which we're going to write, how in the high hell would we have the free will to decide what goes into these stories, what goes into these poems, what goes in to the end part of the writing? I think that's an interesting question. I think that any creative person understands the feeling of being on a roll, of being in the zone, of not knowing where this stuff's coming from. So if you're freely willing to admit that you don't know where it's coming from, and I think most creative people are at some level, if not willing to admit it, scared to vocalize it. Because there's a good deal of it, I think, for anyone who's creative. There's a good deal of the initial creative process over which it seems we have zero control. And that's a little bit of what Bukowski is acknowledging there. Why write me about it? You don't like it? Fuck off. You don't like it? Find another poet. What are you writing me for? You think I'm going to read your letter and think, oh, I did forget to sprinkle the urgency on top of that one. So I think a lot of this poem, a lot of the magic of this poem is about expectation. The writer expects to write, doesn't necessarily expect to be published or loved or adored, or certainly doesn't expect to have someone writing him and critiquing his work. The reader expects his or her favorite writers to be producing at a certain level. And honestly, I didn't expect to read a poem like this. This is a weird poem to read. Very meta. Very expectation driven. Very little window dressing here. But yeah, that's all I have for a non-urgent poem. A non-urgent, actually technically an urgent poetry discussion, because I didn't even take notes on it. Technically, maybe, judging by the title, I was counter poem here. Anyway, I've got new videos on the channel Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mondays are for poetry. I also have new videos on my personal channel Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, a link to which can be found in the description below.